Good morning. All right, I've got to ask for your patience this morning. Uh, yeah, so I'm going to start off. The kids nowadays, I had a student with me this week. Actually, I had several students with me. We had intern students come in, and it was really fun. But one of them, I was joking around with her. I said, "Now, I got to give you a trigger warning." That's the thing that kids say nowadays. so So I am going to give you guys a trigger warning up front. Please do not get upset. Please bear with me. I think that you'll agree with me once you let me say everything, but at first you might be a little, irritated. So please just bear with me. I love you all, every single one of you. And so don't take any of what I say in the wrong way. and I bet some of you are already going, oh boy. So that's okay. Just remember that it's me. I love you. Okay. So in the trigger warning, I also want to remind you of three verses. Ephesians 4:14 through 15 says uh, that we henceforth be no more children tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive, but speaking the truth in love. Sometimes people they'll say something really mean, and you go, hey, that kind of hurt my feelings. You go, well, truth's the truth. And that's not what I think Christians are supposed to do. We're supposed to say the truth with love. We're supposed to say, hey, I love you, but you've put on a few pounds. You might better, those kind of things, right? I get that all the time. Anyway, but so speaking the truth in love may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. So when we speak the truth, we need to speak it in love. Also, 1 Thessalonians 8 through 10, Paul tells us that, well, we'll read it. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and all signs and all lying wonders. Oh, I put all in there, sorry. And with all deceivableness of righteousness in them that perish. And why do they perish? Because they receive not the love of the truth. So if I give you the truth, you should, I know everybody in here will love it. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that everything I'm going to say this morning is truth, okay? But when I give you a Bible verse, that's the truth, right? Okay. All right. So we both agree on that. Or both, all of us. And then Acts 17, 10 through 11. And the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night unto Berea, who, coming thither, went into the synagogue of the Jews. So they had gotten into some trouble in the other place. I forgot what it is. It'll show us in a minute. And so they sent them to another city. And as soon as they get there, what do? They don't lay low. They go straight to the synagogue and stir up more trouble. Or at least they weren't trying to stir up trouble. Verse 11. These were more noble than those in Thessalonica. That's where it was, Thessalonica. In that, now how are they more noble? They received the word with all readiness of mind and searched the scriptures daily whether those things be so. So they were more noble because they listened. They didn't get mad and offended and all that. They just listened. And then they looked at their Bible and said, is it true? And a lot of them were converted. So they listened with an open mind, and then they searched their scriptures. And that's what we had to do. So that's my trigger warning. If you get aggravated at what I'm saying, know that I love you. I'm not trying to aggravate you, but I like to talk about stuff, and you probably won't agree with everything I say. That is fine. And we'll get into that a little more. Okay. Trigger warning over. Let's pick up. We did the fundamental beliefs. I told you this every time, right? But some of the more nuanced doctrines that we have were not really discussed. And because some people think Adventists are weird, I thought it'd be cool to go over that. And so we're going to go over it. This is episode 8. We've had 7, and now we're on 8. That's why we call it 8. I don't know why I said that. Okay, so what is number 8? I'm just kind of picking these as they come into my mind. There's probably more. But number 8 is, you guys support the division between church and state. And there are some Christians who would probably be offended by that. I had a conversation with a person one time, and they blamed Adventists for Sunday not being honored like it used to. So for Sunday not being honored like it used to, they blamed Adventists because we actively have fought against what they call blue laws, laws that keep you from doing things on Sunday. Well, we're going to talk about it. Those are definitely not supposed to be in our government. So we're going to get into that, though. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So let's talk about the separation of church and state. But first, hey, let's talk some politics, because that's really what we're talking about, isn't it? Politics. Lots of politics. If you have been listening at all, you know that Mr. Trump picked his vice president, and I saw this meme, and I thought that's kind of funny there. So you have Trump, and notice he's taking the PE out and putting the VA in, because their names are that close. You know, he had Pence, and now he has Vance. That's pretty funny. I saw that, and I was like, okay, that's good. I don't know who came up with that, but that is good. So I wanted to start on kind of a light note. That's pretty funny. But on a more serious note, last Sabbath, if you were not in a cave somewhere, I'll tell you what I was doing. I got home from church, and I said, I'm tired. I'm going to take a nap. So I took a nap, and I was sleeping good. I was sleeping so good that when the phone rang, I thought Sabbath was over, and it was like Saturday night or Sunday morning. I don't know where I thought it was. And my son called, and he said they shot the president, or they shot Trump, I think is how he said it. And I was like, what? No. If it had said they shot the president, I thought they were talking about Biden. I'd have been just as upset. But I'll prove it to you. I'll prove it to you. I told this story earlier at work. Years ago, I was on third shift, and I was working with a particular guy. I love him. And he came in. We were clocking in. As we got in at 11 o'clock. Of course, you sleep through the day. You don't see all the news sometimes. So I'm coming in. I'm clocking in. He's coming in behind me, and he said, hey, did you hear? And I was like, what? He said, they killed Obama. I said, what? Now, I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent. I'm not a fan of Obama. No offense, Mr. Obama, wherever you're at. I'm not a big fan. But when he said they killed Obama, my heart sunk because he's our president, right? And I was like, oh, no, that's terrible. And he looked at me like I had two heads. And he said, wait a minute. Why is that terrible? I said, he's our president. I don't want our president to be killed. And he goes, wait. Did I say Obama? And I was like, yeah. He goes, oh, I meant Osama. They killed Osama. And I was like, oh, well, I don't like that either. I'm not a fan of people getting killed. Some people deserve it. Some people, I guess we all deserve it to some degree, but some people deserve it more than others. But anyway, so I can tell you right now that it wouldn't matter which president or which person it is, I wouldn't like it. But anyway, so my son called and he said they shot Trump. And I was like, no way. And I made him say, over and over, like, you're joking, you're messing with me. No, I'm not. My sons are trolls. They like to mess with me a lot. But anyway, so sure enough, I turned on. I get my news from YouTube mostly, the independent press, I like to call it. And so, yeah, sure enough, I turned it on. And I'm not going to lie to you. There was a strange feeling that came over me when I saw this picture. When I saw a man who just stared death in the face get up, put his fist in the air, and say, I'm still here to fight. Now, I know a lot of you are like, bleh, and that's fine. I'm not mad at you. But for me, I was like, wow. Because how many of us, it's easy to say, well, I'd do that, but how many of us really would be like, maybe a little wet spot on our britches, and then we'd run to the armored car and never come out again, But this man didn't. He stood up, and he was more, I don't know if he's more concerned about the people or more concerned about the politics. I'm not going to get into that argument, but he looked out at the crowd and he said, hey, I'm still here, is what he would say. He said fight, and so that was pretty amazing, I thought, okay? Again, I know some of you probably disagree, and that's fine. I saw this picture as I was putting the sermon together, and I was like, wow, because they've done graphics and things, and the thing that saved his life was a slight turn or tilt of the head. That's the only thing that saved this man's life, okay? He would be dead. He had probably got it in the eye, which you don't usually survive, especially that caliber of bullet. And so that's amazing. And so somebody did this drawing with, I guess they're implying that God was moving the bullet. And that's kind of cool. Now, again, if you don't like him, it's really sad for me to say this. And I'm not going to tell names, okay? There's nobody in this room. But someone was I heard someone talking, and they literally said, and this is before the attempted assassination. They literally said, if I had a gun, I would shoot that man. And I thought, wow, yikes, what kind of hate, what kind of vitriol is in your heart that you would feel like that towards anybody, Now, I can understand if somebody, people have had their daughters, I don't want to say the R word, but, abused. And yeah, they want to kill somebody. And I can see that. I'm not for that either, but I can see it. Drunk driver runs over your whole family and people get mad about that. But this guy hadn't done anything except for he's irritating sometimes or whatever, but has he really done anything that bad? I don't know. But anyway, that aside, I got into the spirit of a little artwork myself. And so I made a t-shirt and I did post that on Facebook, and a lot of people liked it. There were a few people that didn't, and that's fine too. But after I made this shirt, I thought, I really like shields. I just like shields. I like medieval stuff. And so I wanted to make one in the shape of a shield. And so I made this one here. And I think it looks pretty cool. Now, if you don't like Trump, you probably will not like this shirt, and that's fine. Don't buy it. But the point is, I made it, and then I thought, I would kind of like to put a Bible verse on this one. I don't know what Bible verse, but I'd like to put a Bible verse. And so I thought about it for a little bit, and I thought, no weapon forged against me. But I don't know, that kind of gave Trump too much, so I didn't really like that. Let's be honest, he needs some humility. I'll say that. I think anybody, even people that like him, would agree he needs some humility. So I didn't want to give him a Bible verse like that. And then I thought, there was another one I thought of, I don't remember. But then I said, you know what, let me see. It's a shield. Let me see what I can find in the Bible that has the word shield in it. You know how you do. So I put shield on my phone in the computer Bible, my Bible on my phone. And I skipped, like everything and went down to Psalms, because Psalms usually has those kind of one quick little quip that, oh, wow, and it's really good stuff. So I was going to see if the Psalms had something in it, and I will tell you, brace yourself, because when I came on this verse, I was like, wow. Okay, so here's the verse, and I'm going to give it to you slowly because I want you to absorb this. So the first line is, you, Lord. So this is King David, and he's talking to God, and he says, you, Lord, are a shield around me. Now I think this is a Christian Standard Version. It's not King James, but I just like the way this, and I, for people that maybe don't read a lot of scripture, it's easier to have a more English type instead of Old English. Anyway, you are a shield around me, my glory. So now think about that. David is saying, it's not everything that I do that's my glory. It is you, Lord, that is my glory. See, he's saying, you're my shield. You're the shield around me. You're my glory. Now, you ready for this next part? And the one who lifts up my head. Think about that for a second. It was just a tiny shift of his head that kept that bullet from killing him. And I thought, wow, man, that's pretty cool. You're the shield around me. You're my glory. You're the one that lifts up my head. This is a message that Mr. Trump needs to read, because he needs to realize that any glory he has is coming from God, right? And that would help his humility. He needs to understand that all those bullets that were shot, they could have hit him, but they didn't. And he also needs to understand that God is the one that tilted his head. God is the one that moved the bullet, however he did it. Now, I know some of you are like, would God really help the devil? Because some of you think that Trump's the devil. And that's fine. My dad said the same thing. I love my dad, but that's how he feels. Oh, by the way, this is Psalm 3:3. So, that's pretty cool. But somebody might be screaming, wait. You're being very political right now, Jason. This is a church. You just said that you guys believe in the division of church and state. What on earth are you doing, Jason? And that is a fair question, because we do believe in the division of church and state. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about that. Where does this idea of the separation of church and state come from? Where does the phrase come from? Well, actually, the phrase itself is not in the U.S. Constitution. Most people think it is. It is not. It's not in there, nowhere. So where does it come from? It actually comes from Thomas Jefferson. He said in a letter to the Baptist Association in Danbury, Connecticut, he said, a wall of separation between church and state. And that's where we get the phrase. And what he was doing was he was comforting these Baptists, because they were worried. Now, in that day and time, every colony kind of forced their own religious system. So you had like a colony for the Baptists in Connecticut. You had a colony here. So there was a little bit of a division between the 13 colonies over religion. And it wasn't till later, like I said, Thomas Jefferson and the Founding Fathers, when they started to build the Constitution, do you realize at first they didn't put anything in there about this? The Constitution doesn't have anything about religion and whether or not you should have it or not. It actually doesn't show up until the First Amendment. That's when this whole idea of freedom of religion comes up. And so, wow, they weren't even thinking along those lines. And as they argued about it, and see, that's what's really cool about the Constitution, is it is a living document. It can be changed, but it takes such a overwhelming support of everybody in the nation that it can't easily be changed. And that's a blessing, because if we were a pure democracy, like some people try to say, if we were pure democracy, then all it takes is half the people, a very simple majority, half the people say, you know what, I don't want that in the Constitution anymore. And they could get rid of our rights. They could get rid of the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment. The Bill of Rights, if I remember correctly, is the first 10, I think. They were all kind of put in at the same time. But they could just do away with that with a simple vote. And so we are not a democracy. We're a republic. And that is that we're based on law. And that's good. And part of that law is we can change the Constitution, but it takes a super majority. Every state's got to agree. Yeah, it's like, I don't even remember the whole process. It's ridiculous, but in a good way. All right. So, what does the Constitution say about the separation of church and state? If it doesn't say that term, what does it say? And interestingly enough, it is, like I said, in the First Amendment. And here's what it says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble, or to petition the government for redress of grievances. That's the First Amendment. Okay? Pretty cool. And you may not have noticed, but there are 5 things protected in the First Amendment. So, and this is called the First Amendment, along with the like second, third, I think it goes down to 10. I'm not sure. They're called the Bill of Rights. So think about that now. Bill of Rights. Is the intention of the Bill of Rights to silence me because I'm standing in a church? I can no longer talk about politics. Is that what the Bill of Rights is for? Is the Bill of Rights designed to keep a preacher from saying who he wants to vote for and, hey, it's up to you guys, you do what you want, but I'm voting for this guy or I'm voting for that guy? Yeah, right? This is how most people in our country, not most, a large majority of people in our country think the Bill of Rights is like a big piece of tape over your mouth to keep you quiet. And that is not what the Bill of Rights is for. The Bill of Rights is to limit the power of government, not the people. It is to give us more freedom. And look, I'll show you. Okay, let's look at the 5 things. The first one is freedom of religion. You're free to worship however you choose. Now, what we tend to do is kind of get in groups because we find that we agree, and so we worship together. We may not agree on everything, but on a majority of the major issues we agree, so we worship together. But we do it of our own accord. We do it because we're free to do it, right? Anybody forced to come to church this morning? Kids, don't raise your hands. Anybody else? Right? So, the first one is freedom of religion. Okay, the second one is freedom of speech. Now, I want you to think about that. We always think of freedom of speech as I'm free to say whatever I want. But it's really geared towards you're free to talk about your religion. It's in the same thing. It's right there. It's in the same amendment. So they're saying, look, you're free to practice your religion. You're free to speak about your religion. Now, I'm not saying that you can't speak about other things. You're free to speak about all kinds of stuff. There's a very small limitation. You know, you can't yell fire in a crowded building, things like that. But overall, you're free to say whatever you want, or you should be. And especially, you're free to speak about your religion. How important is that? We'll see. The second one is freedom of the press. Now, we think of press like the people that come up and interview people, right, and the news. That's what we think of. But they were thinking about the printing press. That's what they're thinking, freedom of the press. What did the press do? It printed Bibles. It printed religious tracts. This is, again, telling us we're free to print any material we want and hand it out. Freedom of the press. Yes, it also involves news and that stuff too. They're free. But specifically, I believe it's referring to printing religious tracts. That is the most important thing. And then, of course, the others fall in line. And that might be my opinion. You might not agree. That's fine. The third thing is freedom of assembly. And we think, oh, that's people protesting or people getting together and we don't agree or whatever, right? But it's not just that. More importantly, it's the freedom to come together as a group and worship. This is an assembly right now. Freedom of assembly. And so again, it is really about worship. It's about how you worship and who you worship with. And you're free to do that wherever you want. You can do it in a church. You can do it in your home. You can do it in a tent. We used to have tent revivals all the time. Not we here, but in history. And so freedom of assembly, again, is really about religion. Okay? And then the last one is the freedom to petition the government with, so if the government infringes upon our religious rights, we have the freedom to go and stand before the judge, stand in the court and say, hey, you guys are infringing on my rights. That's important. In fact, in 1888, I think it was A.G. Jones. I can't remember for sure. I put a note in here, but I don't see it. Anyway, I think I deleted it actually. He stood before Congress and said, you're trying to force people to keep Sunday, and that's not legal. And they had a Sunday law that they were about to put into place, and with his argument and a lot of the things that went on, they didn't do it. And so we have, as American citizens, the right to petition our government and say, you are messing up. You're infringing on my rights that are given to me by God, but legally put in legal terms in the Constitution. Now, that's another thing, is people think the Constitution gives us our rights. No, the Constitution only protects our rights. Our rights are given to us by God. Right? Okay. So, with all these things, if they're done right, then we're free to go witness. Think about that for a second. You can speak about your religion. That means you can walk over and say, let me tell you about Jesus. If you can have freedom of the press, that means, let me give you a Bible tract. Right? If you have freedom of assembly, you can invite them to worship with you in your church. And if you have the freedom to petition the government, then you can say, you have gone against my rights. That's a very important little bitty paragraph. I thought it would be long. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to maybe spread this out over several slides. No, it's just that big. But it says a lot in those little words. It's because of this freedom that people can go to church. Even our president, he can go and stand in church and have a political rally, really, in a church. Now, if it was really wrong, then he'd be in trouble, right? But it's not, because he's free too. He's free to say what he wants. I'm free to say what I want, no matter where I'm at. I can be in the pulpit, like right now, or I can be on the street corner. When they start to infringe upon that, they're breaking the law, not me. And so much, just like with prayer in school, and Bibles in school and that kind of thing. If the school says you have to pray, yes, they're messing up. But if the school says, and when I was a kid, they did this, in the morning they say you have a few minutes, they give you like a few minutes to have quiet time and you can pray or do whatever you want. They gave us that because we're free to have that. Another thing is, one day my kid came home and I said something about taking the Bible to school or something. And he goes, no, they said I can't have a Bible in school. And I said, excuse me, who said that? Because that is a lie. You can take whatever book, you can take a Bible, a Quran, whatever. You can take it in school because it's yours. So we have to protect those rights. We have to speak up. We have to petition the government to make sure our rights are kept. An instance of that is this guy from a school. He was a coach, and he would go out on the field and pray with his team. And he didn't tell the team, hey, you got to come out here. He did it. Well, they joined him. If you love a person, he's a great coach, he's mentoring you and helping you, they probably did want to pray with him. But they didn't have to. And they tried to shut it down. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and thank God the Supreme Court said, no. He's free to do that. People are getting fired over this stuff. And if we don't support this guy, he's not an Adventist, but if we don't support him, pretty soon they'll be telling us we got to work on Sabbath. And so we have to protect everybody's rights, not just ours, but everybody's. That's why an Adventist would be against any law that said you had to keep Sabbath, because we want to protect everybody's rights. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 3:17. Now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is what? Liberty. God says, you know what? I want you to be free to choose me. You can't choose God and not be free to do it. You can't force a person to try and be free. Or rather, you can't force a person to worship God and to believe in Him. I don't know why I said free. Anyway, so think about the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is something that's forced on people, right? If you don't take this mark, you're going to go without food because you can't buy or sell. You can't sell to get money to buy food. You're in a pickle. And so there's a forced, so the satanic mindset is force. You will not, we had a president, and again, I love all our presidents, okay? But we had a president that said you have freedom of religion, and he tried to kind of imply in your church. Like, you can be free to worship in your building, but don't come out here on the street corner. That's the mindset. He kind of, I don't remember exactly how he said it, but I listened and I went, ooh, there's a little subtle word in there. Yeah, you have freedom of religion in your church. I don't remember how he said it. That's not freedom of religion. Because part of our religion is to go and witness, to share, to spread the gospel. That's part of the religion. Jesus said, I give you this commission, right? Go and tell the whole world the good news. And so you can't put that limitation on the church. And we just read it. They don't have the right to do that. It's enshrined in our law. They do not have the right, I'm talking about the government, to keep us from speaking, praying, any part of that. The interesting thing is the seal of God is something that you receive by choice. The mark of the beast, you're forced. The seal of God is something you receive by choice. That's why we're called the elect, because we elected to receive this seal, to receive God into our hearts, to have Jesus in our hearts, right? And so that's really important that we make religion free. It has to be connected with liberty. All right. Now, I'm going to aggravate you some more. Trigger warning again. So, can God use this man? Look at how proud he looks. He's a very proud man. He really is. And he has some reason to be. I'm not going to argue. He's done things. I hadn't done half the stuff he's done. Right? So he's got some reasons. But can God use him? There are people who are like, he's the devil. We can get him out. He's the worst thing ever. And if you say, well, God's might be using him, they'll throw up on your shoes almost. Well, I want to remind you that God used the Roman Empire, and they weren't nice. They crucified Jesus. It wasn't the Jews that crucified Jesus. It was the Romans. It was the Jews that turned him in and falsified the accusations and said he said things he didn't say. But it was really the Romans that actually did the work. It's kind of the same thing with other churches. They kill people and then they go, well, it really wasn't us that killed them. Yeah, but you turned them over to the authorities so that they would kill them. I had a conversation with a Catholic friend, and I said, what about they burned Joan of Arc at the stake? What's up with that? Well, it wasn't really the church that burned her at the stake. It was the English. Okay, but the church is the one that handed her over and said she was deserving of it. Yeah, anyway. So the Romans are not good guys. Did God use the Romans? Most definitely, because it was during the Roman period that they made the most amazing roads that the gospel was able to travel. The gospel went all throughout the Roman Empire on these wonderful roads. And this, I like this graphic because it kind of shows you how they made them. So they dug down, and then they put one type of stone and another, and then paving stones. In fact, they made them so well that they're still being used today in some places. You can see here there's a cart rut wore into the rock. That's how long these roads have been used. Did you know that the width of the railroad track here in the United States is based on the Roman road, because the width had to be the same as the hind end of two horses. I'm not going to get into the whole story. I'll tell you later if you want to hear about it. But it's pretty amazing just how God used the Roman Empire and the Romans' roads and the Pax Romana, Roman peace, to spread the gospel. Now, don't get me wrong, later on, and this is a pattern for us to think about, They were really helpful at first, but then they started persecuting the Christians. And that's probably a pattern we're going to see. They're really helpful right now, and later on they'll probably start persecuting us. But does that mean that we fight against them when they're helpful? No. Now, when they start to persecute, we need to bring our petitions before the Congress and before government, right? Okay, so again, can God use Donald Trump? Some people cringe when you say the name. I hesitate to say it because I don't want to upset people. That's how bad it is. Oh, don't say that. I literally have an uncle who told me never to say the name in his house again. And he was so angry, he had to walk out of the building, out of his own house. And I was like, wow, you can say Biden all day long. And I'm not like, what is going on in this country that there are people that feel that angry about this? I sat with some wonderful guys, and I was the only Trump supporter. I'm not saying I'm a full-on supporter, but going by my choices, I like it. I really wanted Ben Carson. I don't know how, but I like Ben Carson. Yeah. Yes, I would love to have him as president, but I guess he's just not quite as loud, Anyway, but what dang, I got myself off. Anyway. Huh? Oh, yes, thank you. I was with a group of, man, isn't it terrible being ADHD? Anyway, I was with a group of guys, and I was the only one that kind of liked Trump. And, man, they would dog him and say all kinds of bad stuff about him. And I didn't get mad. I laughed because he's not my daddy. Sure, I like him a little bit. He gets on my nerves every once in a while. Everybody does, right? So I'm not going to get mad about that. But there are people who act like, anyway, yeah. I've beat that drum enough. Okay, so here's a way to answer whether or not God can use Donald Trump, okay? And it comes from Prophets and Kings. And I just wanted to share this with you because I thought, wow, isn't this something? All right, so it's talking about Daniel, and it's talking about his experience in the lion's den. Now, you remember Darius put Daniel in the lion's den because he broke the religious commandment, which should not have been made, that you could only pray to King Darius for, I think it was a month. I can't remember. And the only reason they put that rule in place was to get Daniel. Huh? 30 days. Okay, a month. But the only reason they put that law in was to get Daniel. That was it. And so, of course, Daniel was going to do his religious freedom. He was going to practice his religion no matter what. And so he gets in trouble. He gets thrown in the lion's den. And so this is kind of talking about the aftermath. Now listen. The deliverance of Daniel from the lion's den had been used by God to create a favorable impression upon the mind of Cyrus the Great. Now, Cyrus was a general. He was under Darius, but he ends up becoming king after Darius. And, of course, because Daniel's already got this impression on him, we can understand that there was probably some communication between the two. We don't know for sure, but probably. So Cyrus the Great knew about Daniel and was impressed by him. Let's keep going. The sterling qualities of the man of God as a statesman of far-seeing ability led the Persian ruler to show him marked respect and to honor his judgment. And now, just as the time of God had said he would cause his temple at Jerusalem to be rebuilt, he moved upon Cyrus as his agent to discern the prophecies concerning himself, with which Daniel was so familiar, and to grant the Jewish people, their liberty. So she's saying, look, because Daniel was freed, he survived the lion's den. King Cyrus knew about it, and so he respected him, and he was there ready to hear what Daniel had to say. And we don't know for sure. Even she doesn't say that Daniel's the one that pointed this out, but it seems to be like she's implying it. And so most people, when they do, they have a picture of King Cyrus, and here's Daniel showing him the scroll and pointing at it. What's he pointing at? Well, it's a really long paragraph. Really long. So, and the way it's worded can be a little confusing. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to break down what she says, what Mrs. White says, and then we're going to look at how she quotes the Bible. Okay? I'm not pulling a fast one on you. There it is. But I just want to separate the two for a second. So the first part, we take all that out. That's the Bible quotes. Notice this is true with most of Miss White's writing. When you take the Bible quotes out, there's big blanks. I mean, she's quoting the Bible left and right. But anyway, listen to what she says. And the king saw the words foretelling more than 100 years before his birth the manner in which Babylon should be taken. Now remember, Cyrus was the general, and he diverted the river and went under the wall and took Babylon. And so Daniel is showing him in the scripture that was already promised, that you would do it this way. And we'll look at it. Like I said, I made that part black. We'll look at it. Okay. As he read the message addressing to him by the ruler of the universe, that's God, as he saw before his eyes the declaration of the eternal God, as he traced the inspired record, his heart was profoundly moved, and he determined to fulfill his divinely appointed mission. He would let the Judean captives go free. He would help them restore the temple of Jehovah. So think about this. This is a pagan king. He is a Donald Trump, okay, of his day. This guy, he's called Cyrus the Great, and I'm sure he didn't mind being called Cyrus the Great. Okay, same thing with Donald, right? Same thing. So here he is. He says, he sees these prophecies, and then he wants to fulfill them. He wants to do what God has asked him to do, and that is to set free the Judean captives so that they can go back and worship according to the dictates of God. That's pretty cool. So you can see that a pagan, prideful king can be used by God. Would you all agree? Now, I'm not calling President Trump a king. He is not a king. He's elected. But, I heard that. He'd like to be. All right. That's funny. Okay, anyway. So now let's look at the Bible verses that she quotes. Because she says he's seeing this, he's seeing that. But I wanted to separate it out. To me, it's a little easier to understand. Okay, so here are the Bible verses. This is, now they're from Isaiah 45, 5, 6, 4, and 13. I gird thee though thou hast not known me. Think about that. You don't know me, but I gird you, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none besides me. There's only one God. For Jacob, my servant's sake, and Israel, mine elect, I have even called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. So God's naming him, and this is like 100 or so years before he was even born. Cyrus was even born, and God saying, I'm going to name you. And look what he says. Thou hast not known me. I have raised him up in righteousness, and I will direct all of his ways. He shall build my city, and he shall let go my captives, not for price nor reward. So in other words, God is telling, and by the way, I thought it was in here, but it's not. It names him. God said, Cyrus, my anointed. And remember, anointed is Messiah. So he's calling him almost like a type and shadow of Jesus. And what does Jesus do? He frees the captives of Israel. He frees God's people from the bondage of sin. And so this is a picture, a type and shadow of Jesus. So, but the point being is that he's a pagan king, and God could use him, and God named him in Scripture. And when Daniel shows it to him, Cyrus is like, this proud king is humbled. He's like, wow, okay. God spoke about me by name. Can you imagine if you opened the Bible up and it said, Jason, and you'd be like, "Ooh, that's amazing." All right, so why does God put a separation between church and state? Does God put a separation between church and state? Huh? Oh, look at there. You're ahead of me. That's right. Mark 12, 13 through 16. Let's see what Jesus has to say about it. And they sent unto him a certain Pharisee of the Herodians to catch him in his words. So they're going to try and trick him. Jesus was constantly dealing with this. They're going to try and trick him. But Jesus has access to the wisdom of the universe. He's constantly talking to his Father. And what's funny is, before this conversation, that morning he was in prayer, and I'll almost guarantee you, I don't have a scripture for it, but I'll almost guarantee you, as Jesus prayed to his Father said, a guy's going to come along and ask you about taxes. Here's your answer. That's how it worked. Now, I'm not saying Jesus isn't God, but when he was here, he operated as a man. He gave all his power up and walked in our shoes. That way nobody could say, well, if you walk a mile in my shoes, oh, Jesus has. In fact, his were sandals. But anyway, so they're going to try and trick him. Verse 14. And when they had come, they said unto him, Master, we know that thou art true and carest for no man. In other words, you don't care about whether or not people like you. Now, listen to the political smoothing that this guy's doing. We know that you're great, right? Oh, the hook is in that somewhere, right? When a fish sees the little morsel on the hook, that's what's going on here. But Jesus, like I said, I believe Jesus was already warned. He already knows what's coming. For thou regardest not the person of men, but teachest the ways of God in truth. And then now here's the hook. Is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar or not? In other words, are we supposed to pay taxes to Caesar? By the way, Caesar is another word for king. Okay, so you could say king. You could say president right here if you wanted to. Is it lawful to give your taxes to the king or to the president? Now, if he says, no, we shouldn't pay those pagans, then they could call the Romans and go, he's trying to rebel against Caesar. But if he says, oh, yeah, you should pay your taxes, all the people will be like, ooh, we hate tax collectors. We hate paying taxes. I hate paying taxes too. Everybody does, right? So you could see how they got him in a pinch, right? Wrong. Shall we give or shall we not give? But he, knowing their hypocrisy means acting. He knows this is all an act. They didn't mean a single word of it. They don't believe he teaches the truth. He said unto them, Why tempt ye me? Bring me a penny that I may see it. And they brought it, and he saith unto them, Whose is the image and subscription? And they said unto him, Caesar! So he's like, he shows them a coin, and he says, whose face is on this coin? I got a coin, but it didn't pop up. It'll pop up in a second. But whose face is on this coin? And they all said, Caesar. Whose name is on it? Caesar. And then he gives, there's a coin. And Jesus answering said unto them, Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. It blew him away that he got out of that pinch. Why? Because he was talking to the Father. If we want to get out of pinches, talk to the Father. He'll guide your tongue. He'll guide your tongue just like he lifted a person's head to keep a bullet from taking them out. He'll guide your tongue to say the right words. And so, yeah, this is really cool. But I want you to notice that Jesus does put a separation. He says, Caesar, God. He's got a separation between the two. Now, if that's not enough, I got two more Bible stories really quick. I know I'm probably over. Just bear with me. These are a little long. I'm going to try to run through them as fast as I can. The first one is in 1 Samuel chapter 13. Saul. So it says, and Saul, it says he, but it's Saul. And he tarried 7 days according to the set time that Samuel had appointed. But Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. So Saul's got all his people together. He's waiting on Samuel. Samuel doesn't show up. He's late. Oh. And by the way, I'm going to steal a line. A prophet is never late. He shows up exactly when he means to. And some of you may know what that's from. Anyway, okay. So let's go on. Verse 9. And Saul said, bring hither a burnt offering to me and peace offering. And he offered the burnt offering. Wait a minute. Who's offering the offering? Saul. King Saul is offering an offering to the Lord. That's okay, right? Let's go on. Verse 10. And it came to pass that as soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering. Isn't that always the case? It's like if you'd have just waited a minute more, That's why, if you're having hard times, don't give up. Because it's probably going to be in that next minute. People, unfortunately, they off themselves, right? And when they do that, a lot of times the salvation that they were looking for was just a moment away. If you'd have just waited another minute, imagine people hanging on. If you could just hang on one more minute. I know sometimes you can't, but, just wait. Saul didn't wait. So let's see what happens. So he said, as soon as he had made an end to offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him that he might salute him. Hey, like a kid. When a kid does something wrong, they did something wrong. Because when you walk in the room, they're all like, oh, hey, how you doing? You're like, what are you up to? Same thing here. It's amazing to me how much Saul is kind of like a child. Not that I got a lot of room to talk. Okay, verse 11. And Samuel said, what hast thou done? See, it's just like a parent. What did you do? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattering from me, and thou camest not within the days appointed, in other words, you're late, and the Philistines gathered themselves together at Michmash. There's some funny names in the Bible. Therefore said I, the Philistines will come down upon me to Gilgal, and I have not made supplication unto the Lord. I forced myself, therefore. Oh, he forced himself. Isn't that funny how, you can't, that's called political spin. He didn't force himself. He didn't wait. He should have forced himself to wait, but he didn't. I forced myself and offered a burnt offering. Now, what's Samuel going to say in return? It's not good. And Samuel said unto him, thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandments of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. He would have made your line the line of kings forever. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart, and the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee. And so you can see here, there's a separation. The king doesn't have the right to give burnt sacrifices. Now he can bring a bring a sacrifice to the priest, and the priest offer it. But the king himself is not supposed to do that, because in the sphere of religion, he's just like the rest of the people. He is not a Levite. He's not a son of Aaron. So he's neither one. And so he messed up. He took on himself the operation of religion when his sphere of influence is only government. He's only king. He's not priest. Now, at the same time, the priests aren't king. And why? God separated these two. We'll talk about why. All right. The other story is in 2 Chronicles 27. And the first part is 27 through 28. So let's read it. Now, after the time of Amaziah, I'll get it in a minute, Amaziah, did turn away from following the Lord, they made a conspiracy against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish, but they sent to Lachish after him and slew him there. So this king was a good king. His name is Amaziah. He was a good king, but then he started to turn away from God. And so the people actually conspired against him, and they murdered him. So he was assassinated. Okay. Next verse. And they brought him upon horses and buried him with his fathers in the city of Judah. I'm telling you all, I want you to see the entire story. That's why I'm giving you this background. So bear with me. Then all the people of Judah took Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in the room of his father Amaziah. So they killed his father, and then they put him in as king. He's 16. Okay? He built Elath and restored it to Judah. After that, the king slept with his fathers. Now, I think this verse is saying Amaziah was the one that built Elath and restored it to Judah. And then, so they're kind of giving you, he built this city. You know, they're kind of giving you a little bit of what he did. Okay, verse 3. 16 years old was Uzziah when he began to reign. And he reigned 52 years. That's a long time. You imagine a president for 52 years? There'd be people just ready to, well, anyway. 16 years old was Uzziah when he began to reign, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name also was Jecholiah. Jecholiah? Huh? Oh, okay, Jecholiah. Of Jerusalem. You know, sometimes I'm just guessing at these names. They're tough. Okay. Now we're going to go to verse 4. Yeah. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father Amaziah did. So before Amaziah messed up, Uzziah is following that pattern that his father. His father messed up towards the end. We're not really, I don't know if we're told why. I didn't see that. But he's following his dad's example before he messed up. Okay, verse 5. And he sought God in the days of Zechariah, who had understanding and visions of God. And as long as he sought the Lord, God made him prosper. He sought the Lord, God prospered him. That's a little lesson for us. Verse 6. And he went forth and he warred against the Philistines and brake down the walls of Gath. Remember, Gath is where, no, not Samson, Goliath. Goliath was from Gath. Anyway, Samson is the, he's a judge. Yeah, anyway, okay. And the walls of Jabneh, yeah, or whatever, and the walls of Ashdod, and built cities about Ashdod and among the Philistines. So not only did he conquer them, but he conquered them to the point that he could build Israeli cities in their territory. So he's really whipping up on them. Now I want you to see how great this guy was, okay? And in verse 7, and God helped him against the Philistines and against the Arabians and against the Gurbaal and the Mehumians. Mehumian? I don't know. Verse 8. My mom, when she come to a word like that, don't know that, skip it. That was when she was young. I don't know that word, skip it. Well, I don't know that word, skip it. Verse 8. And the Amorites gave gifts to Uzziah, and his name spread abroad even to the entering of Egypt, for he strengthened himself exceedingly. So this guy's a great king, okay? You know, he wasn't a weakling. Verse 9, for Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem at the corner gate and at the valley gate and at the returning of the wall and fortified them. So he's making Jerusalem a stronghold, right? Next verse, 10. Also he built towers in the desert and digged many wells, for he had much cattle. So he's rich, both in the low country and in the plains. Handsome husbandmen also, and vine dressers in the mountains, and in Carmel, for he loved husbandry. So he liked making. He was into the vineyard stuff. Verse 11. Moreover, Uzziah had a host of fighting men that went out to war by bands according to the number of their account by the hand of Jeriel, the scribe, and don't know that word, skip it, the ruler, under the hand of Hananiah, one of the king's captains. So he's got an army, he's got towers, he's got wine, he's got flocks. God is prospering this man, right? All right, verse 13. And under their hand was an army, 300,000 and 7,000 and 500 that made war with mighty power and helped the king against the enemy. And Uzziah prepared for them throughout all the hosts shields and spears and helmets and halberds and bows and slings to cast stones. His army was outfitted with the best stuff, the newest technology. Verse 15. And he made in Jerusalem engines invented by cunning man. In other words, like trebuchets, and you know, a trebuchet throws big rocks. What's the other word? Catapult. Thank you, catapults. Trebuchet is like a catapult, but it's a little different. Anyway, to make towers and upon them bulwarks, to shoot arrows and great stones withal. And his name spread far abroad, for he was marvelously helped till he was strong. So he had all this stuff. You weren't going to take Israel while he was king. Sounds pretty good, right? Would you vote for this guy for president? Most definitely. I would. Sounds like a great guy. Okay. Verse 16. But, you don't really want that word in your story. But, unless it's he was a really bad guy, but then that's better. But this is not. We just heard how awesome he is. But when he was strong, his heart was lifted up to his destruction. For he transgressed against the Lord his God, and went into the temple of the Lord to burn incense upon the altar of incense. He's doing church work. He's a king, and he's going to go in and try to act as a priest. We already saw King Saul did that. It's a mistake, right? He didn't learn. This guy didn't learn from Saul's example. Verse 17. And Azariah the priest went in after him, and with a 80 priests of the Lord that were valiant men. And they withstood Uzziah the king, and said unto him, It pertaineth not to thee, Uzziah, to burn incense unto the Lord, but to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and that are consecrated to burn incense. Go out of the sanctuary. Get out of this church. For thou hast trespassed, neither shall it be for thine honor from the Lord God. So in other words, you're messing up. Now, what do you think his answer would be? Oh, yeah, you guys are right. I don't know what I was thinking. No. Because he's strong. He's proud. God built him up, and now he's going to tear himself down. Verse 19. And Uzziah was wroth. In other words, he's mad. And he had the censer in his hand of burnt incense. And while he was wroth with the priest, the leprosy even arose upon his forehead before the priests in the house of the Lord, from beside the altar, the incense altar. So in other words, he's really angry. He probably would have done something, but all of a sudden leprosy pops out on his forehead. Because God is trying to say, whoa, now I have prospered you, but now you're stepping outside of your job. You know, at my job, we're union, and we have electricians that do certain work, and machinists that do certain work, and pipe fitters that do certain work. Well, not as much as we used to, but the point is we have different work. And so when they tell us to do something, sometimes we go, whoa, that's not my job. I'm an electrician. I don't do machinist work. Now, sometimes other crafts won't say that as easy. That's a different story. Anyway, point is God saying, hold up now. Verse 20, and Azariah the chief priest and all the priests looked upon him, and behold, he was leprous in his forehead. And they thrust him out from thence, But not just that. They didn't just have to throw him out. Yea, himself hastened also to go out. He's like, whoa, and he got out of there. Because the Lord had smitten him. And Uzziah the king was a leper until the day of his death. He was a leper for the rest of his life. Guess what? He couldn't go to church. He couldn't go to temple. If you had leprosy, you had to stay away from everybody. They quarantined you. You didn't wear a mask. Well, you did wear a mask. You were supposed to cover your bottom or your lip, but you couldn't go into church or around people even with that mask on. It didn't work. And he dwelt in a several house, being a leper, for he was cut off from the house of the Lord. And Jotham, his son, was over the king's house, judging the people of the land. In other words, his son had to take over the responsibilities of the king. So it's sad, he was such a great leader, but he let it get to his head. And the next thing you know, he gets into this pickle. And he ended up dying as a leper. So why does God put a separation between church and state? Well, the answer can be summed up in this quote. Now, I don't like the quote. I'm going to show you why. I like the quote, but I don't like it. I like part of the quote. I don't like the other part, and I'll show you why. But has anybody ever heard this? Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolute. That's from Lord Acton. He said it a long time ago. But I disagree with the second half of this, because absolute power does not corrupt absolutely. And the reason I say that is no one has absolute power except for God. And he is not corrupt. And so that's why I don't really like that part of the quote. That's not true. But it is true, if we could put it this way, power tends to corrupt man. That is true. But absolute power is something only God has, and he is not corruptible. And so that's why I reject that last part. I mean, I know what he was trying to say. The more power you have, the more likely you're going to be corrupted. But he didn't say it that way, and I don't like the way he said it. That's just me. I've been dying to tell you guys that for years. Anyway, all right. This is also a really good quote from a very great president that was assassinated, unfortunately. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Think about that for a second. We can all deal with being poor and not having stuff and struggling, but give a man power and see how he acts. Then you know his real character. That's pretty cool. So the reason God separates church and state is because he doesn't want anyone to have all that power, because it has a corrupting influence. And so God in his wisdom says, we'll have people over the church and we'll have people over the government. Now again, that doesn't mean that we can't all speak what we want, because we're all free. The president is just as free as I am to say what he wants. He has freedom of speech, right? Everybody agree with that? Okay. So will there always be a separation between church and state? That's a good question, I think. It came to me, I worked on this all night long. I didn't sleep. So that question came to me. I never thought about that. Will there always be a separation between church and state? Well, you know that in the Bible, there are only two positions that are anointed positions. The high priest was anointed, right? And the king was anointed. And so those are the two positions that we're talking about, right? The high priest is over religion, and the king is over the government, the civil. But they're both anointed positions. So when would they no longer be separate? When the true king comes, he is both king and high priest. And so there will be an end to the separation of church and state. Why? Because he has absolute power and he cannot be corrupted. And so there will be an end of church and state. And guess what? That's happening very, very soon, and I can't wait. I wouldn't mind. Now, some of you might get mad at me on this. I wouldn't mind if it came before the election and I didn't get to vote for Trump. That would be great. I'm going to put my vote on Jesus way before I vote for anybody else. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for the freedom that you gave us and that our government right now protects that freedom. And Lord, I know that the time is coming when they're going to slip out of that. And they have done it in the past, and they've done it a little bit here and there. But help us to trust you, to be like you, and to follow your word. And to remember, no matter who we support, as far as elections and all that, help us, Lord, to remember that you are our king and leader. And that no matter who goes into office, we can always trust you and we'll make it through. I thank you, Lord, for all these things. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. And I'm sorry if that was really long, but you have to watch the first part. Does everybody still love me? Okay.
It has nothing to do with you. You ain't the evil man that's.
Why not what? Oh, why not love me? Oh, just in case.